Every year in our nation's capital, the cherry blossoms are a welcome sign of spring. But this year, they coincide with another, far less welcome Washington spectacle: turmoil over taxes.
We cannot afford $1 trillion worth of tax cuts for every millionaire and billionaire in our society. We can't afford it.
This is the most predictable economic crisis we've ever had in the history of this country. And yet, we have a president who is unwilling to lead.
With our national debt above $14 trillion, has the age-old debate over taxing and spending finally reached a tipping point?
We cannot, we must not, and we will not balance our budget on the back of the people who can least afford it.
While the two sides seem far apart, there is one thing nearly everyone agrees on.
The American tax system is a huge, convoluted mess.
A mess that's completely unfair.
A mess.
A mess.
A mess.
Of the many people who are fed up with our tax system, you might want to pay closest attention to Nina Olson.
For someone describing the tax code as a mess, people might be surprised to learn who your employer is.
The Internal Revenue Service.
The IRS.
Yes.
The complexity of the tax code is
Since 2001, Olson has been the national taxpayer advocate.
Congress has told me to be the voice of the taxpayer inside the IRS. It's pretty daunting.
What's most daunting? The sheer complexity of it all.
The tax code is now 65 or 70,000 pages?
Yeah, it's very long.
You've been here for 10 years. The tax code has only gotten more complex.
Yes.
Is that frustrating?
Yes, and one could say I've failed.
But before you blame Nina Olson and the IRS, hold on. They don't make the rules, they just do what Congress tells them.
We looked at how many changes in the tax law had occurred. In last year alone, it was something like 579 changes.
579 changes?
Changes in the tax law.
In 1 year? That's more than a change every day.
Yes.
How do you keep up?
I don't. And I don't know how individuals or businesses keep up.
And while frustration with our overly complex tax code might seem like a uniquely modern problem, in fact,
it's one of those evergreen complaints. Just like I pay too much in taxes, I think my taxes are too complicated. You could ask people that 200 years ago, 100 years ago, or last week, and you get the same answer.
Joe Thorndike is a preeminent tax historian with the Virginia-based research firm Tax Analysts.
Taxes were definitely a big part of the revolution, a big part of the origin of the American nation.
Take the Constitution, for example. Remember all that stuff about we the people and ensuring domestic tranquility?
I think that the Constitution is in many ways a tax document. It's designed to give the federal government a strong power to tax. And it does, in fact, do just that.
For nearly 100 years, Congress didn't use that power very much until a national crisis forced its hand.
The Civil War prompts a major change in the tax system. They introduce an income tax, they develop lots of new taxes on consumer goods.
So we can blame the Civil War for introducing the income tax. But it was World War II that made it what it is today.
During World War II, they changed the income tax from something targeted just at rich people, and they made it a middle-class problem. They say it changed from a class tax to a mass tax.
In 1944, the top tax rate was a staggering 94%. It declined slowly through the 60s and 70s until 1982 under Ronald Reagan, when it fell to 50%, eventually working its way down to the current rate of 35%.
And all the data are overwhelmingly showing that for the last 30 years, money has been flowing upward. It's not trickle-down economics, it's Niagara up.
David K. Johnston is a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter who teaches tax regulation at Syracuse University Law School.
If you're a single person making $500 a week, your total federal tax burden is significantly higher than someone who makes $1 million a day.
No.
Yes, you'll pay almost 22% of your income in income and payroll taxes, or you did in the year 2007. And that year, the 400 highest income taxpayers, who made $345 million on average, only paid by the same measure about 17 cents out of each dollar.
The reason, Johnston says, individual and corporate tax breaks, all stemming from the same source.
Political favors. Let me take one company that's been in the news, General Electric. Last year, they spent $39 million lobbying Washington. That's $73,000 per member of Congress and the Senate.
Well, you know, the main loopholes on the individual code are actually middle-class benefits.
Chris Edwards studies tax policy at the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank in Washington. He says while it's easy to blame the rich, the reality is the bulk of tax breaks are for the middle class.
It's the mortgage interest deduction, the exclusion for health care, insurance. It is true that wealthy people hire lawyers and accountants to benefit excessively from these tax code loopholes, but really most of the benefits go to the middle class.
And increasing taxes on the wealthy, Edwards says, will only further cripple an already wounded economy.
What happens when you raise rates for higher income people? They reduce their productive activities like working and investing and starting businesses, and they increase their unproductive activities like tax avoidance and tax evasion. So governments really shoot themselves in the foot if they raise rates too much.
Every time I get a tax cut, I get richer. I don't put money back into the economy, I just get richer.
Leo Hendry, Morris Pearl, and Dennis Meal don't agree that raising taxes on the rich will hurt the economy or the rich. And they should know they're all multimillionaires.
We're talking about millions, each of you. Are we talking about much more than that?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I've been very blessed in my career, but it's been serendipity. And it was not, any part of it, Seth, was supposed to come from unfair tax rates. And that's what
Media investor Leo Hendry and the others belong to Patriotic Millionaires for Fiscal Strength, a Democratic-leaning group of 200-plus millionaires who've signed petitions asking President Obama to raise their taxes. Dennis Meal is chairman of a major manufacturing company.
Why, in your view, is paying taxes patriotic?
There are things that we want to do as a society. They're not free.
Morris Pearl is managing director of a leading New York investment firm.
Are the wealthy gaming the system?
Yes.
Every day.
Yes. The wealthy have hugely more access to the legislators than the average American. I pick up my phone every day and get calls from members of Congress who want to talk to me, mainly because they want donations to their campaigns.
People would love to reach their congressperson. You have them calling you?
Unfortunately, yes.
There's no doubt the question of how much in taxes millionaires should pay is important. But the IRS's Nina Olson says there's an even bigger source of untapped revenue that almost no one is talking about.
Any income that is paid by check, cash, whatever, that is not reported to the Internal Revenue Service, the person who mows your lawn, things like that, is the largest area of the tax gap.
People like folks cleaning a house or running a farm stand and not reporting?
Restaurants, whatever. That's a bigger cash loss.
And whether it's people skimming from the bottom or getting breaks at the top, the guy in the middle is footing the bill.
If everybody reported their taxes properly, people would pay per person $2,200 less.
It's enough to give every American a headache. But if you're feeling angry or bewildered this tax season, historian Joe Thorndike suggests you look at the big picture. From the Constitution forward, taxes have always been a critical part of the ebb and flow of our democracy.
I think that filing taxes, even if it's a little bit painful, not such a bad thing, because it forces people into that moment of awareness. What kind of government do I want? Oliver Wendell Holmes said that taxes are the price we pay for civilization. But we have to decide over and over again how much civilization we want.